Absolutely. So, Vivian, we're going to talk a little bit about one of the solutions that we built for you, and we call it, you call it proforma. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is, how JMM uses it, and what is making it unique?
So basically, a proforma invoice is an invoice that we use to show customers what we have physically in stock and ready to ship, so we can collect a prepayment. And we basically, based on our inventory, we are able to pick the items systematically for what's available, and based on that, based on the items picked, a proforma invoice is generated to send to customers.
Okay. And you send it to them, they send the payment, and then you apply the payment to the invoice and you continue processing the order or orders, right? It could be multiple orders, right?
For yeah, so we needed this solution because we used multiple sales orders, and this was the only way to combine multiple sales orders into one invoice.
Right. So only specific lines that are being picked or ready to go, right? You would put them on a proforma and then send out that document to the client for approval and payment.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Right, Nick. And I'll talk a little bit about our solution. So essentially, as we were going live, so we phased this project. So what we like to do at AlphaBOLD, depending on what we're doing with a client, in this case, we were implementing NetSuite, and we had many priorities before go live date. So, and we had a limited budget as well, right? So we're always kind of limited by the budget and by the scope of work. So what we did is we decided to phase this project. We, with the client, with Jacques Marimage, we decided what is the optimal solution, what is the best case scenario when it comes to a customization and a product. And then we said, okay, let's phase it. Let's see what we can deliver around go live of the project. And that was the phase one. And then as the customer, as JMM gets comfortable with NetSuite, then we'll introduce phase two and then subsequently phase three as well. So we wanted you to get comfortable with the system first and then introduce improvements to the process. So I'll walk you through, so if you move to the next slide, Nick, I'll walk you through the process, what we did. So in the first phase, we created a simple saved search. If you're NetSuite users out there in the audience, you'll understand what that is. From the saved search, where we're listing the items that are, let's say, sales order lines that are picked for a specific customer, we gave JMM the ability to create a printed form and then send that form to the customer. As you know, this is just a printout. You would send it out, but there wasn't a real transaction in NetSuite. There was no real tracking that was possible, and there was a lot of manual work that resulted because of this kind of limited process, right? It still worked. I mean, you could still create a nice form from NetSuite or a nice printed proforma, but there was no tracking capability within the process. So if you move to the next slide, let's see what's next. So then in phase two, what we decided to do is we decided to create a real transaction called proforma invoice, right? And essentially, if you look at this diagram, you see all these different sales orders and they have their natural flows. Sales order goes into an item fulfillment, which is a shipping transaction. And then once those lines are shipped, sales order lines are shipped, then you can invoice those lines that are shipped, right? Create an invoice. So we did not disturb the natural flow of NetSuite. Sales order resulted in an item fulfillment was then transformed into an invoice. What we introduced is a transaction on top of this flow, and we called it obviously proforma invoice. And we So if you go to the next slide. So then what we did is we gave the ability to Vivian and her team to pull the appropriate sales order line. So you select the customer on a pro forma, and then we gave her the ability to pull the relevant sales order lines directly to the pro forma by clicking a button. That's that little button near the circle number 2. And then by clicking on that button, the sales order lines that are appropriate and relevant would be brought on to the pro forma transaction on a line level. So next slide. So as a next step, we linked sales orders to pro formas automatically. So now we created relationships between sales order lines and pro forma transaction. We also created a relationship between the invoices. So if the invoice is created from a sales order, now it's also linked to the pro forma, and all of that exists on a pro forma lines. So now we have a way to link all of this together and provide tracking. So if you go to the next slide. The final thing that we did is we gave the user the ability to apply a payment to the pro forma. So imagine sales orders and invoices, and now you have this separate transaction that's linked right to the sales orders and invoices. And we gave the ability to Vivian to apply the payment directly on a pro forma, right? And then through a customization and a backend process, where we're able to pull all the invoices that are linked to the pro forma and close them by applying the payment that's attached to the pro forma. So if you move to the next slide, please.
I tried, but again, my screen is paused.
Again. Yeah, let's try again, refreshing.
Yeah, give me a second here.
Sounds good.
There we go.
Thank you so much. So we created all of this, but then we realized, okay, now the users also have a need to speed up the process a little bit, right? So in this case, Vivian needed to be able to import pro formas and then specify the sales orders that this pro forma is related to, okay? And we tweaked our customization to allow the capability of importing those transactions via regular NetSuite CSV import tool. So we enabled that functionality. So now Vivian can take all these pro formas, bring them into the system, and then automatically the backend routines are adding the lines to the pro formas, and then she can proceed to the next step of the process. We also, what we did is we created a scheduled process that I believe that we may still be testing, right? It's not fully implemented yet, but we created a separate process where if the payments are submitted before the invoices are created, we created a schedule that goes and checks for the invoices that were created after the fact, so that these payments can be applied properly to the invoices from the pro forma object. So that was.
So in phase 1, it was basically just a pretty report that we created. There was no real transaction in NetSuite that we can look back into. So once we send a pro forma out, we would either have to track it through emails or we save it as a file in NetSuite. So now when we moved into phase 2, we actually have a real transaction. If a customer calls us and asks us about a pro forma, we can easily search for it. And then we can also see, like, based on a sales order, which sales order is related to which pro forma and which payment is related to the pro forma, just so all the transactions kind of have a link. Because the way NetSuite is built, it's kind of based on like one single sales order, and we can't combine multiple sales orders into one invoice. So this is kind of our around it.
I mean, there are processes in NetSuite. There are grouping invoice processes. There are a lot of other processes in NetSuite that allow you to consolidate transactions, but none of them work exactly like you need it to work.
Yeah.
And that's a concern, right? We needed a solution that really meets your requirement, meets your need.
Yeah, and then in phase 3, this was when kind of everything came together, because I'm able to process like 100 proformas at once, and we don't have to manually go in and create one at a time with like this import. This really sped things up. And then we were also able to create a workflow which automatically sent out these transactions to customers. So that also saved us time for customer service. And then we also have another workflow. Now that it's a real transaction, we can create workflows to like send follow-up emails for customers who haven't paid yet. So that completely took away, I would say, like, I mean, creating proforma is like 20 hours a week for customer service around, so this helped a lot. They don't have to do that like daily anymore, and it's kind of automated.
Wow. So would you say 20 hours turned into 2-3 hours or 10 hours? What would you say would be this time saving for this process?
So when we like send follow-up emails, that's done daily, and we have like 3 members in customer service, and it takes them about an hour each day to do that. And then for this, it still takes me a little bit longer just because of our allocation process. But I think it still takes me like a day to get through this, only because our allocation process is a bit difficult. But without that part, if you're just picking an order, if that's all you need to do, then I would say like an hour. Like you can export everything after you pick it and just import it back in.
Wow,
That's great.
that's great news. I wasn't aware of this. This is amazing. Okay, so following on, unless Andrea, is there anything to add relative to performance?
I mean, I think that this was a very powerful example of wonderful tool. I would say that NetSuite is a very potent, powerful platform. I work all my entire life before with SAP, which is as powerful, I think, but much less flexible. And especially what I notice is that in less than a year or so, I think internally with Vivian, we developed the capability of visualizing what NetSuite can do. And then through the partnership with you guys, find a technical solution that little by little brought very much significant, improvement in the accuracy and saving of time. I mean, I was with my AR team this morning, and I'm getting them involved into accounting because ever since we started, I think whatever Vivian and you guys implemented, free about 25% of their time. So I think that this was a very good example of how the right system, the right people in place. Because I mean, without Vivian, it would be very difficult to keep improving. Right. And the right partnership can bring a substantial benefit to the company.
Amazing.
Your day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just what I can say is that the benefit of the implementation of the suite were multi-layered and exponential, since we were kind of starting from scratch. But for sure, the accuracy rate on fulfillment increased significantly. Obviously, because we have a a much better awareness of what we have in stock and what the orders were from the customer. Before, it was a constant matching between Excel spreadsheet. So right now there is a much more systematic, a fully systematic approach to this. So we know what's coming in and we know what's been ordered. We match them and we provide the delivery to the customer. Rate of return as well decreased significantly because we make less mistake in shipping what we need to ship. The 50% on the fulfillment cycle time is just a number, but I think that at the end of the day, if we were to really time what was before, this number would be even higher in the sense. And of course, shrinkage. As much as we were careful in handling the material, not having the support of a system is just such an element in handling the accuracy of the inventory, which is a given that you're going to improve in terms of shrinkage at the end of the cycle. Even because honestly, there was not any substantial physical count procedure before, nor cycle count. So as Vivian described, we were getting stuff at the warehouse, then we were checking what was there and then shipping it out. So if it wasn't there, we couldn't find it. And there was an exercise at year end more for financial purpose of trying to match an inventory which was just based out of vendor invoices for the upload and customer invoices for the download. So it was really an accounting exercise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and essentially made it impossible to plan. Very difficult to plan if you don't have the right data in front of you.
That's correct. And if we look at our business model, just for the sake of clarity, we basically launch 2 seasons a year, and there is a phase where we present our collection to our sales force. And after that, there is a period of approximately, a month and a half, where there is a massive collection of orders from our account. We are talking about today a network of more than 700 accounts across the world. So we consolidate this order on different styles. At the same time, we push purchase orders to our manufacturer in Japan. The fact is that this product then came to us with a specific cadence. So they don't come all together, and more specifically, they don't come consistent to what the orders were. So think about the sales order, kind of a bulk order with multiple styles, multiple color, and then we receive inventory as we go, which are most likely than not like one batch with one style and one color. So here, that is probably the biggest challenge that we had in handling this situation, and that's where probably what you guys did, because I wasn't here honestly. So I'm not gonna take any credit for that. That's what you guys figure out with the proforma process procedure.
Built some Power BI reports that we connected to NetSuite. So we're pushing the data from NetSuite into the Power BI reports. Now I have a question, because I'm not closely linked to this project. Are you pushing any other data into these reports, or is it just coming straight from NetSuite? And that's more the question for Adrian.
So right now it's coming straight from NetSuite, but we'll add also some forecast numbers, which we might have to handle through Excel spreadsheet. And then the next step will be information coming probably from Google Analytics and different sources, just to bring everything together and leverage on the power of Power BI to visualize in a fancy way instead of having just the usual Excel table and a lot of numbers. It's just a different word.
Yeah, absolutely.